You're listening to the 95 Podcast from the team at 95 Network, where we host conversations specifically designed to support leaders in small and mid-sized churches. Welcome, everybody, to the 95 Podcast. I'm Caralee Culpepper, and I am here with our Executive Director, Dale Sellers. Happy New Year, Dale.
Well, thank you. Happy New Year to you as well.
Really, by the time this airs, I guess it will be the new year, huh?
Well, yeah, the plan is that this will be the very first podcast of 2022. And man, the last 2 years have been interesting.
You are right about that.
Especially what we deal with. But, it's not, one of the things I'm trying to be cautious of is trying to make it sound like us pastors have it worse than everybody else, because we don't. We have it bad, but everybody's got it bad. I mean, it's just been a difficult season. And so for us to have gotten through another year, and honestly, I told our family, and they told me, stop saying this, that I told them, I said, the last quarter of last year, October, November, it's going to be really good. And they were like, don't say that, because we our family and all of us have been through so much. So happy New Year.
I know. Well,
it's funny, you go into the new year and I'm already tired.
Right.
That's not the way you want to start the new year.
Well, we were just talking about how many hats you're wearing here lately. So
yeah.
What, speaking of the new year and, kind of what we're going to be talking about today about casting a vision, for the next year and things like that. Do you, are you one of those people who sets New Year's goals, or?
I do goals. I do goals. I don't do resolutions because, I don't see any sense in doing things that you already know you're not going to follow through with. But I do try to tweak a couple of things. One of the things I'm working hard on right now is I can't believe I said it this way. I'm working hard on learning how to not work. I'm working hard as I've gotten older. I've got to be, if I don't schedule time off, and we know we've had podcasts that talked about this. Carrie talked about this. Lance Witt talked about it. Everybody's talking about it. If I don't intentionally block out time to chill out, I won't do it because there, again, as you said, I've been wearing a lot of hats. There's a lot going on. There's a lot behind the scenes stuff I've had to do in the last year. But I'm turning 60 this year, 2022, I'll turn 60 years old, which that blows my mind. But I will tell
60 is the new 30, right?
It's exactly. Well, I was going to say 40, but I'm with you. Okay, 60 is the new 30. But through all the things I went through this past summer, and one of with the sabbatical and going to see the Bob Hamp and getting counseling, one of the things that Bob really drilled down on was that I've got to take care of myself first.
Yes,
and
absolutely.
I don't do that very well, and pastors
me neither.
Pastors don't do that well, because our whole thing is serving others, and there's nothing wrong with that. We want to serve others, but you can't serve others at the detriment of your own self. And it was funny, because I used to hear years ago, I went to this John Maxwell conference, and he talks about, and this is all fictitious, but he said there's this guy that died and went to heaven. When he got to heaven, he's like, he walks up to Jesus, and Jesus is like, hey dude, what are you doing here? And he's like, well, I wore myself out for you. And Jesus goes, you weren't supposed to be here for 10 more years. And we have this concept, and it's not a Messiah complex. It's a humility servant attitude, which we should, but you can't. I'm no good to everybody if I'm dead.
I know.
I'm no good to
I'm
everybody
learning
if
that
I'm
too.
worn out. Well, you're just a kid. I mean, I wish I could have figured it out when I was your age. But so that's a lot of. So when I'm talking about the new year and setting goals, it's usually built around health and taking time off. One of the things that I will do from this point forward, after this past summer, is that when I go on vacation, I'm going to take 2 weeks. Because it takes the first week just to shut down. And see, you don't get to do this. You got little kids. Well, one day.
Yeah, there's really not such a thing as a vacation at this point.
When you take your kids on, if you and your sweetie can get off and go off for a weekend or something like that, that's about all you can do. And here's the thing about life. Life's all about seasons. And I loved every season of our lives. I mean, I love my kids. I love my daughters. I love my grandkids. Last night we went over, our daughter's out of town, so we went over with our son-in-law and just helped him do supper and put the kids down last night. And
wow, that's great.
And I went, and I was and my granddaughter Sienna, she wanted me to be the one to put her down, and she's, I need you to snuggle. And so I'm there.
Well, man,
I'm there with her, and we're snuggling, and I looked at her and I said, I love you. I think you're so awesome. And she said, Poppy, I love you, and I think you're awesome too.
Oh
And when a
man.
4-year-old tells you that, and so I went downstairs
Yeah,
and I'm going,
nothing better.
don't miss, just don't miss out on that stuff. But you can get so caught up in ministry or in life itself that if you don't control your calendar, your calendar will control you.
I think that's kind of my goal this year. The word that keeps coming to mind for me is intentional. And
That's a
I
good
think
word.
that, I'm kind of in that same boat, like just life in general. I mean, 2 small kids that we're just busy. But I'm just starting to realize how fleeting their childhood is, and also being intentional about resting, like you're talking about, so I can be the best I can for my people. And then,
Well, as I've gotten to know
making
you,
room for the Lord to speak to me instead of being so busy that I don't stop to hear
as I've
what
gotten
he
to
has
know
to
you,
say.
I've discovered you're a female version of me. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
very driven, very how does I don't know if I found a word to explain how I was always on edge. That's a good way to say it. Just always on edge that I wasn't doing something right. And see, you got to understand, and this will all lead into where we're going today. When I grew up in the 70s, I grew up in a Southern Baptist church in South Carolina, and I went to these things we did from time to time called youth rallies. We'd go to these youth rallies, and these guys would get up and preach these messages about how that when you get to heaven, they're going to play a big screen. They're going to play a video of your life. And they're going to show you all the people in hell that you didn't reach.
Oh, mercy.
Oh, they used to tell us that when you come in contact with people, you are responsible for their eternity. Well, see, I'm a firstborn, and I'm very performance oriented. And so
am I.
I took that personally. And so I just got to this point where I'm going, I walked down the halls of my high school and feel like I was responsible for everybody in the high school. I would go to a football game. I'd go to Clemson. There's 80,000 people there. And I would feel like now that I've been to this game and I've seen these people, I'm responsible. Now, I know that sounds stupid or nuts or whatever, how you want to word it, crazy. But that's the way I was. And so I got to where I lived every day just walking, laying down at night, walking away from that day going, well, I failed again today. And so I just, and if you knew me though, see, here's the wild thing, Caralee, if you knew me, you would look at me and go, wow, that dude's so successful because we've got this group on the road. We're doing all this ministry stuff. I worked at a Christian radio. I worked at his radio for years doing concerts and events. The things I did that people saw. So nobody knew how I felt till I turned 55 years old and told Tony Morgan one day that I felt like a failure. And he was like, you're not a failure. I'm going, but I feel like one.
Right.
And so this thing got down on inside of me. And I literally would live every day just going, man, I don't measure up. And it literally almost killed me because, we just finished December when we, and that was the 6-year anniversary of my quadruple bypass surgery. I know. And I had a widowmaker. I didn't know it. And I would not be here with you. I would have never met you unless if I had applied for an insurance policy to re-up my insurance policy. And the in-home nurse came and did an EKG. And then a few days later, I got a letter. They turned me down. So my EKG came back abnormal. But I didn't panic. I just said, well, she messed that up. But I mean,
I would have hit the panic button. That's for sure.
I didn't panic at all. The thing that I panicked about was I wasn't going to be able to renew my insurance policy. I didn't panic because I thought that I just didn't think it was real. And you got to understand too, I wasn't even feeling good then, but I just thought I was getting old. Yeah. And so the Lord intervened in my life. And see what I tell everybody is he had to heal my heart because the physical heart was a good example of my spiritual heart. Yeah. Right. And I'm not talking about sin. I'm not talking about, I didn't off doing stuff that people didn't. I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about being religious and works oriented. Right. And it about killed me. So, right. And then
aren't you so thankful that God doesn't care though?
He does. See, again,
he doesn't care how much we do.
I didn't know we were going here, but just so with my father, my earthly father, he and I love my dad. I worked construction with my dad. We did a lot of work together, but my dad was not verbal. My dad my dad never told me I love you. My dad told me 3 times I love you, and all 3 times we're at a church service where they made us all come forward and do that. And actually, the 3rd time he didn't even say it because we're all crying. He goes, but I counted that one anyway.
Yes.
And so, but I needed that. My mother was highly verbal, and honestly, I used to tell people in high school my mom was one of my best friends because I could tell her anything. But she died when she was 64, and so she's been gone a long time now. But with growing up with Dad, I worked harder trying to get him to notice me. Or to acknowledge or say something to me, or go, see, if I came to you and David, we did work for you guys at your house, my dad would brag all day long about it to you, about me, but he would never tell me. And somehow that got on the inside of me. And I translated it over to my relationship with the Lord. And I just felt like he was, and so when people would say things like, you just need to, crawl up in your father's lap and let him hold you, or Abba Father, which means daddy, that don't mean nothing to me. I know that sounds weird because I'm very loving and very I hold my daughters, I hug them, my grandkids. I mean, because I used to say, when I have my own kids, I'm going to tell them I love them, and I'm going to hug them and hold them, and I'm going to do the things that I didn't. And see, I made those decisions when I was a teenager. Early teens. This is because I knew then there's a deficiency happening, and I'm not mad at my dad. I don't blame my dad. I know the era he grew up in.
Right.
We just missed out on a piece of life that I wish we could have had.
Right.
So when I see especially men with their sons, I've got a friend named Nick, and his dad Rick. I just love their relationship.
Oh,
because I've never been riding in a car with Nick ever that his dad didn't call, and they always close it up. I love you, son.
Yeah.
And see that I just love that. And so I'm learning that Jesus loves me. This I know.
That's right. No matter what. The Bible
tells me so.
That's right.
And it's not based on what I do.
That's right.
So
it's not based on how hard we work and if we don't take a break, right?
And so all of this kind of is a good lead into what we want to talk about today. So
yes, absolutely. And I'm the one in the driver's seat. I'm asking the questions today.
I'm pretty fired up today, man.
I'm excited too. But I think really what we wanted to do is just kind of talk about 95 Network and the future of it and how things are going, and just kind of give everybody a little quick recap on.
Well, when you do it all the time, this is the hard part of anything in life, is you have to always especially for pastors. Pastors cast vision, but and I used to do this, and I used to every year at the beginning of the year I would do a vision series, and usually it was 4 or 5 weeks at our church. And man, I'd cry. I'd not cry, if you know what I'm talking about. I mean, I'd just cry and carry on and just pour my life into it. And I'd have this passion, and I'd cast vision of all the things we're going to do in that new year. And then it started hitting me after a few years of pastoring that about end of February or March, everybody forgot everything I had said. I'm like, what? Because I'm like, and so what I understood later was that, and I don't know if it's the original with him, but Andy Stanley always says that vision leaks. It's like a tire with a hole in it. It slow leaks. And so you have to keep pumping it back up. And so when you're going wide open all the time, and anything in life, but especially pastoring or leading, when you are casting vision, and 95 Network, I've been doing this now for 3 years, and so it's like, wow, I need to remind people why we do what we do, because I know why we do what we do.
Right. Because you see it every day. Right. Exactly.
Yeah, I live it. So anyway,
let's start with the basics.
Okay.
Why are we called 95 Network?
Well, if I had met you for the very first time, and one of the things I learned a long time ago is we tend to offer the solutions for problems people don't know exist. So the name, and I did not create the name 95 Network, but it stands for the fact that of the 300,000 churches in America, 95% of those churches have less than 500 people attending. 87% of those churches have less than 200 people attending. And 75% of all the churches in America have less than 100 people attending. And those numbers were pre-pandemic. So those numbers are even skewed lower now. And so our heart, our passion is to come along beside and support the small and mid-sized church pastor. So thus the name 95 Network is because we want to help the 95%.
That's great. I love it. So you've been working here for 3 years. which leads me to my next question. Who started the 95 Network?
A dear friend of mine in Peoria, Illinois, named Jim Powell. Jim started 95 Network in 2014, which is really cool because that's the year I started doing leadership stuff. I started my own company. And I didn't know Jim back then, but over time, me and some pastors were meeting, and we were trying to come up with ways, how can we help the small church? And so Jim, we met him. We actually just did a Zoom call with him once, and then he actually flew in, and we just hit it off. And so Jim asked me to join the board of 95 Network, which was based in Peoria, Illinois. And so I did that. And then he reached a point in his life. His church ran over 1,000. It's called Richwoods Christian Church over in Peoria. And he was pastoring the church, and he was leading 95, and you just can't lead two large organizations to the level you need to.
Right.
So he was considering either leaving the church and doing 95 full time, or leaving 95 and going to, and he eventually decided that he needed to stay with the church. And so he basically turned, it was a nonprofit. We are a nonprofit. We live off financial support. That's how we do what we do. He turned it over to me and some other pastors, which I was already meeting with this group of pastors, and we were going to form our own nonprofit. So it was a God thing. We didn't have to go through that whole process because they'd already done all that. And so Jim Powell from Richwoods Christian Church in Peoria, Illinois, he founded 95 Network. And then in 2018, in the July is when I began to lead it.
Perfect. That's great. That is great. I know that one of your passions is, meeting these pastors of these churches and getting to know them, and just providing them with a lot of resources, just to help them. I mean, that's the main goal, I feel like, of 95 Network. And I hear you talk about a lot, the 5 C's, as far as ministry emphasis. Tell me a little bit about those.
Well, here's the thing. When most small church pastors go to a conference, there's always been these large conferences. They typically walk out of a conference at a large church with one of two thoughts. Either one, I'm glad they can do that stuff, but I could never do that at my church. Or they'll leave that conference going, you know what, I'm going to try that stuff. And so you have a pastor at a rural church somewhere in Nebraska who goes and adds a hazer machine to his service and adds lights. And 2 weeks later, they fire him because they say, he set this church on fire. There's smoke everywhere. and so what we begin to understand is there's not a lot of support and resources specifically designed for small churches. And so we came up with the 5 C's, and then we thought through those things for a long time. And it originally was the 4 C's until we added the last one. But the first one is content. And so we try to create, this is why we do this podcast. It's why I do blog posts. We try to create content to come along beside and support the small church pastor. So every article, the podcast are always from that bent. Even if we talk to people in large churches, we want to do something specifically to encourage the small church person. And then we do our conferences, and our conferences, a great conference for us is 40 to 50 people around round tables in a fellowship hall. If we go to a church that has all the fancy lighting and all the band, we don't do any of that. And it's not that I'm against lighting and bands. I love all that stuff. But if you're a small church pastor and you're already discouraged, and you go to a conference and they got this, great band with this state-of-art lighting and that kind of thing, you walk in and you're already discouraged before the day starts. And so I literally we did one of these conferences at a place, and then pastor knew where I stood on this. He actually went and flipped on all his fancy lighting. And I said, you got to turn that stuff off.
Yeah.
He goes, well, but why? I'm going, you don't understand. I'm thankful you have that. And I'm thankful that it helps you to reach and connect with your community. But a lot of guys come here, they don't have that. A lot of the ladies that come here, they don't have that. And so it's very important that we make it. And so we love to do it around round tables. We typically do 5 sessions. They're for 40 minutes. And I'm very strict about our schedule being right on point. And then after we do a teaching, we do a breakout, and they sit around the tables, and for about 20 minutes, they answer questions about the topic we just talked about. And I'll be really honest with you, a lot of the great impact of our conferences isn't the teaching we do, it's what happens around those tables, because relationships are formed, pastors let down those walls. And so we want you to leave very encouraged. We bought these really nice pens that we give out to the pastors. And it's funny because pastors they'll email me a year later and go, hey, my pen ran out. Can I get a new one? Because we want them to feel encouraged. We spend a lot of money on our handout. We don't make money at the conferences. And we don't do them to make money. As I said, we're a nonprofit and somebody's paid for us to be there. We try not to lose a lot of money like on the travel and stuff. So we do the conferences. The next thing we do is coaching. Even the great golfers have a coach. Even if you're an individual or you're on a team, everybody's better with a coach, because
Absolutely.
it's good to have outside eyes to help you see things about yourself. I share with you some things that came out of that report that we did, that survey we did last year, and with some outside eyes. And so we do a coaching. We do a 6-month coaching process. We've also created a new coaching avenue that we call digital discipleship coaching to help
with Jesse Barnett. We've had a podcast with him
to help pastors learn how to do better with online. And then after we do that, I do consulting. One of the things we do here at 95 Network, we have several guys who do what we call vision days. And that's where we come in and work with an individual church. And it's a very, very honed in process that I was trained in a process called StratOp. I worked at the Unstuck group for a couple of years. And then I've created kind of my own thing specifically designed for small churches who have never been through a strategic planning process. And then the final C is connections. I have a vision. It's been in my heart for a long time, that if someone contacts us, that if we don't have what they need, that we have a relationship with someone that can help them. So that's why we have strategic partnerships. We have a resource directory with dozens of ministries in any arena of ministry to help. If a pastor has a need, if someone in the church has a need, we want to have the connection. And I will tell you this: if someone calls me and they need answers in an area that I don't know, I'll find somebody to connect them to.
Yeah, exactly.
And so we do the connections. And then the other thing about me is, one of the things that I do, and I don't know if I hope I have capacity to always do this. If someone emails me or calls, I always take it. I always talk to them. I don't care who it is, what it is. And I literally talk to pastors every week. I talk to a new pastor somewhere in America that is discouraged. And so that sums up the heart behind what we do and why we do it. We just want them to know, Kara, I used to lay on the floor in my office and cry for a friend when I was pastoring, because I pastored a small church for 12 years. So it grew from 30 to 300 to 150 because we went through a split, and then it closed. And there were so many times I'd lay on the floor and cry for a friend. And I don't want a pastor from this day forward to ever do that. I want them to know 95 Network is their friend. We're here to help them.
Well, and I was looking on the website earlier, and I kind of pulled out this little quote that's on there. It says, "The true heart of our organization lies in connecting you with like-minded church leaders, really to build community." And I mean, I think, a cord of 3 strands can't easily be broken, right? So, I mean, the more people you have supporting you, the stronger you are.
Well, that's why we do the 95 membership. So we have a membership, costs $95 a year to be part of our membership. And then we have we have thousands of dollars worth of resources that our members get for free once they join. But one of the cool things about that is we have a closed private Facebook group where pastors interact in there, and we try to connect these folks to encourage them. And I do not get on the Facebook group very much because I don't want 95 Network to ever be about me. And so I don't want to be on there giving all the advice, because I love to see what the pastors say to each other. And we have Travis Stevens who leads that for us, and Travis does a phenomenal job of guiding it and leading it. But again, it's an outflow of what you're talking about. We created that community for them.
Yeah, I think that's so great. I mean, just to have other people there that get it, Yep,
you're right.
All right. So you talked about the membership a little bit. I think the Facebook group is so great, where everybody can kind of run ideas by each other. And let's talk about the ministry team. So I think there's been a few changes here in the last year or so, which I know that you're really excited about.
I'm excited, humbled, and blown away, because when we started 2021, our team consisted of me, Austin, who'd been with me from the start, and then Stephanie. Stephanie does our finances for us. And so we were the team. As of today, as we record this, we have 12 people either already on the team or being onboarded onto the team. And these are people from all over the country. And I'm astounded at the people the Lord's connecting us with. You're one of those people. You were such an answer to prayer, and then to find out your background, that you grew up in a small church and your dad was a small church pastor. There's some things the Lord continues to do that just I told my wife, I told Gina the other day, I said, I feel like I'm being used. And that's good. It's a good thing, because there's just so many things he's doing right now. And we got John Sanders from South Dakota, and Travis is over in Tennessee, and we got Jason over in Ohio, and and just because the list goes on, we got Bobby in Alabama. Joseph is a missionary to Honduras.
Oh,
and
wow.
he's on our team. We got Mary Ann that does, does our volunteers. And we've got, as I said, Stephanie doing the finances, that we've just got such a great team of people, and God continues to bring more and more of those people with us, to join us, to be part of what we're doing. Brent Carter is with us, and Brent works at Faith Life. And he and Christine, they moved from Seattle, Washington to South Carolina. And it's just
oh, wow.
Yeah, they packed up their whole family and moved over here. And it's just it's a great group. It's a diverse group. And there's some more new people we're onboarding. And as with this podcast, it literally dropped the day it drops. We're all coming together for the first time. The whole team's flying in and coming in from all over the country, and we're doing a strategic planning retreat ourselves. On the first Wednesday of January, to really hone in and make sure we're clear on our vision and our mission for the new year. And so,
practicing what we preach, right?
Blown away at the quality of the people, the seasoned people that God continues to bring to us. If somebody's suffering in their church, not knowing how to do volunteers, we got Mary Ann that just knows so much about that. And so I'm not going to tell them about volunteers. I'm going to hand them off to Mary Ann,
That's right.
It's just what we're going to do it. And so our team is only Jesus could do this. Only Jesus could put this together like he has. And
Absolutely.
And it's really cool. It's really,
really
cool.
It is really cool to see God work in ways that we definitely couldn't have done ourselves, right?
Ain't no way.
Talk about planning for 2022. I'm very excited about our Vision Day. And I think that we'll probably have a lot of stuff to talk about, because you recently did a national survey of small church pastors, and the results of that were very interesting. So I would love to hear some more about that. One, what were some of the results? And two, what are your thoughts on that? Were you surprised? Were you not surprised?
Well, what we did was I reached out to a company. Mark Stiles, a friend of ours, he has an agency. I think he's in Indiana. And I just said, hey, I want to do a national survey. I want to find out where pastors are. And one of the things I want to do with 95 Network, I want to make sure that we connect 95 Network with the pastors who don't know we exist. Because that's one of the things that one of the reasons why we did the survey. And so I think we had 14,000 people that we at least know looked at it or whatever. And we had about 100 that filled it out.
Oh, wow.
And I'm like, oh gosh, but I have to be honest. I don't like filling out surveys. And it was kind of an in-depth survey. And what we did was, we gave away a free copy of my book, either the ebook or the actual physical copy. So we sent out about 100 copies of the book to anyone that would fill out the survey. Just because we wanted to get a feel for how can we connect even better with small and mid-sized church pastors that are hurting, that are going through difficulties, that are, they need some direction in their life. And so that was part of the reason we did this survey. There is something I was surprised about, but I want to save it to the end.
Okay.
Little teaser there, because a lot of the results that came out were kind of what I thought they would be. But there was one thing that came out that really amazed me. Yeah. Now, again, I understand. I think the survey was skewed because it's still in the middle of the effects of COVID.
Right.
But one of the things I have said all along about the shutdown, and we've been addressing it, doing webinars about it, we've been on point with this thing since the beginning. I do not believe one church will close because of the pandemic or because of COVID. I believe what happened with the pandemic was it became an accelerator of what you were doing. In fact, because you oversaw the article, you edited the article. I did an article earlier this year called 7 Years in 7 Weeks. And what happened was when the pandemic happened, when the shutdown happened, it happened about a month before Easter. And so we all had to scramble. Oh, okay, we can't meet in person. What are we going to do? So everybody scrambled and found ways to get together just to find a way to have church for Easter. And so Easter was a distraction. It was a good distraction, but it was a distraction. What happened afterwards, though, I literally saw this happen. About 2 or 3 weeks after Easter is when pastors were like, now what? What do we do now? We're Americans, man. We're used to it. Okay, I want this to be over.
Right.
And if you're listening anywhere else in the world, that's just the way we are. It's like, okay, we're tired of this. Let's move on. And it didn't go away. And it got worse. Right. And then we had the racial tensions that happened. I mean, I know of 3 pastors who preached a message on racial reconciliation, and their church fired them that afternoon, which still blows my mind. But we have, and then we had the political stuff going on, and we're still dealing with the fallout of all of that, because a lot of churches got involved in politics. And I'm not going to go into everything I think about that, but you don't need your church is just, you need to be sharing Jesus with people, not parties. I'm going to leave that alone for now. But so anyway, we went through all that stuff, and pastors got more and more discouraged. Part of the reason I did this survey was because we'd heard on 2 occasions that 80% of pastors were considering quitting, and I didn't believe that was true. But as I got back out in the fall of last year and began to do conferences, we had 4 conferences that we had planned we canceled. We have never canceled a conference, right? Because pastors weren't signing up, and and the feedback we got from some of our influential supporters and friends was, they said, we have talked to pastors who are going, listen, I don't have time to learn about mission and vision. I don't have time to learn about strategy. I'm just trying to get through the day. Yeah. And so they didn't even come and try to get the help. Now here, the flip side of this is also true. The conferences we had last fall were by far the most powerful conferences we've ever had. Same material, but I'm telling you what, those who came hungry, and Jesus did some amazing things in those conferences. And so as we look at the results of the survey, I understand when it was taken, the context of when it was taken, because we still have pastors not sure if they're going to stick it out, not sure if they want to keep doing this. And I got to be honest, I understand it, because some churches beat their pastors up, especially small church pastors. 95% of all the churches in America are small, and it's not difficult to understand why. We have, our churches are small for a couple of reasons. One reason is because so many pastors, they define who they are by what they do. So if you ask them, who you are, they say, I'm Pastor Dale. Well, you know what? Pastoring's what you do, but it's not who you are. Right. I'm Dale, I'm husband to Gina, and I'm dad to Tiffany and Hannah and Lydia, and I'm Sienna and Si's grandpa, and I'm friends with lots of people, and ministry is what I do, but it's not who I am. If you define your life by being a pastor, then you won't hand things off to people. Yeah. You won't raise up a team. You because you need to do everything, because it fills your emotional tank. So instead of raising up someone who can maybe do something better than you can, you don't do that, because you don't want them to get too far up in the spotlight. Now, again, I know pastors don't want to admit this, but this is the truth. The other thing that's happened that's caused us, the churches, to be small, and this is even bigger, is that most of our small churches view our pastors as hirelings. In other words, I had a pastor I worked with this year whose church board called him in and said, look, you work for us. We're your boss. You will do what we tell you. Well, pastor, let me tell you right now, that is not true. You work for Jesus. And so what's happened to us, the reason our churches are small is because, I always say this, there's this book called the Bible. There's a guy named Jesus who started something called the church. And in Ephesians 4, he told us exactly how to do it. He says, I'm going to give you these gifts: apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers, to equip the saints to do ministry. We don't do that. Yeah. Either the pastor needs to do it all so he can fill his emotional tank, or she can fill her emotional tank, or the church expects them to do it all. Well, here's what I know about God. If you don't structure according to what he said, then we limit him being able to move in that setting. And so you can call what we've gone through the last few years, whatever you want to call it. For me, I'm calling it the Great Correction, because that we were on the wrong course anyway. And we've been on the wrong course for a long time. And honestly, here's the thing. I've been saying this to pastors a lot. We live today in the residue and the consequences of the seeker movement and of the attractional movement. And it's all that stuff. And again, I'm not knocking anybody, but I just want you to know this. Jesus didn't call us to make converts. He called us to make disciples. And having people come and sit, watch you do your thing, and then listen to your band play, and then go home every week and go, man, wasn't that rich? My mom used to say that all the time when I was growing up. Pastor would be preaching. She'd go, we'd be riding home and I'd be a kid. Mom would go, boy, wasn't that rich? I'm going, oh, what does that mean, Mama? I don't know what that means, When it becomes about people just come and watch us do what we do, that's not the model of the New Testament. That's not what Jesus has called us to do. And there's this mistaken thought out there that only the big churches or the mega churches do that. But I'm telling you right now, the problem in America churches, I don't know about the rest of the world, but in an American church, the problem is the entire church is personality driven. And that can be true in a church of 50, and that can be true of a church of 50,000.
Okay.
Because we don't create succession plans.
Mm-hmm.
I'm amazed. If you ask me today, as now that I'm turning 60, what is the biggest thing that has shocked you in the church and being in ministry for 40 years? The number one thing I think that shocks me is that we don't raise up someone to hand off the church to.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I've got a plan now of who to hand 95 Network off to, and I want to do that in the next 10 years.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't plan, if you don't prepare, then all of a sudden it catches you by surprise. And succession and who you hand it off to should never catch you by surprise. We should be focused on the next generation all the time.
Right. Tell me what personality driven is.
Oh, well, your dad was a small church pastor.
Uh-huh.
And your dad had a lot of people who loved him and loved. What's your dad's first name?
Howard.
We just love Pastor Howard. Pastor Howard's a great pastor. If I'm in the hospital, I want Pastor Howard to come. And what happens is it's not anything your dad did wrong. It's the way the church has been designed. Andy Stanley he's very well known. Well, he's a personality. But what we want to make this mistake when we go and look at Andy Stanley or Robert Morris or Rick Warren, these big church guys, we think they're the only ones that their churches are personality driven. I'm telling you that when your daddy was pastoring, the same thing was happening.
Okay, gotcha.
My daddy here. This is great. You'll love this. My daddy used to say this, and he would have said this about your dad. He's a good little preacher. And I always wonder, what does that mean, Daddy? Pastor Howard, he's a good little preacher, and that what he means is he approves of your dad.
Oh, okay.
Pastor, you see, it makes sense. And so it's about the personality, and then the flip side is. I won't name any of these people, but there was a few people that came into our church life that he did not call good little preachers. I'm not going to say what he called them.
Right.
And so everything is, so here's what happens if I go to Pastor Howard's church and then he preaches something I don't like, he starts meddling in areas of my life that I don't want to necessarily be meddled in. All of a sudden, God calls me to the next church down here where Pastor Tom is. And I'll stay at Pastor Tom's church, so he does it. And then all of a sudden, God calls me over here, where Pastor Bill is. And so all of a sudden, instead of being plugged in and committed to the local church, and you're there come hell or high water, you get offended and leave. And in Ephesians 4, when it talks about he gave us, now you got me preaching. You see that? In Ephesians 4:11, he says, he's given us apostles, prophets, evangelists, pastors, and teachers to equip saints to do ministry. And on down there, what it teaches us is in those next verses is that in verse 13, you're going to have, you will have maturity. And in verse 14, you'll have stability. And in verse 15, you'll have integrity. And then in verse 16, you'll have community. Integrity says you can speak the truth in love. We can't do that in our churches. If we speak the truth in love, people get mad and go to the next church.
Which I think is so funny because Jesus did that and people were offended. So.
And did he chase them down?
Right.
He didn't go chasing them down.
Right.
He said, if you know the truth will set you free. And so that's why I say our churches are personality driven. We tend to try to find someone. And here's what people always say. The reason I left Pastor Howard's church and went to Pastor Tom's church is because I wasn't getting fed. Well, I don't know where you got that from, because Ephesians 4 doesn't say you're supposed to get fed. It says you're supposed to be equipped to do ministry. And this sounds foreign, but it's not. It's Bible 101. We've taken everything that's so simple and made it complicated. And we're moving into an era where we need to take what's complicated and make it simple.
There you go.
Yeah.
There you go. What do you think are what did the survey say about some of the biggest personal challenges that pastors
when it came to
facing?
Personal challenges, it's 61% of them said they were dealing with discouragement. 40% said they're dealing with burnout. And then 27%, this breaks my heart, we're dealing with financial instability. But one of the things that's happening, Kara, that's my new name for you. One of the things that happens is there are hundreds of pastors, soon to be thousands, who are retiring who have no retirement. Because a lot of them opted out of Social Security. A lot of them have lived in parsonages their whole life. And I even wrote about this in one of my recent articles. There's a lot of churches out there that think you're godly because you're broke. And there's nothing farther from the truth. And so I've encouraged pastors, and John Sanders, one of our team members, John, he doubles down on this hard, that we encourage pastors, you know what, you need to be bivocational if you can. And you need to have some income on the side so you can take care of your family. And so, when you're living already stressed out, but if pastoring's all you know how to do, then you tend to not resolve that problem. You stay in bad situations. And so, discouragement and burnout and financial instability, it creates what we all now know is called trauma. And again, that's a whole nother podcast, because that's something we don't deal with at all. So when it came to personal challenges, those were the top three: discouragement, burnout, and financial instability.
What about church challenges?
And this is getting to the meat of the survey. So of the pastors we surveyed, 43% said reaching unbelievers was a huge challenge for them because they don't know how to do it. 42% said reaching the younger generation, which, if you understand that 95% of all the people who give their life to Jesus do it before they turn 20, those two are connected. And then 38%. So all these were really close to 40 percentile. What the guys answered was declining attendance, because our churches are aging, our churches are dying, and in so many cases we're not doing what it takes to reach young people, our young families, or till it's too late. I had a board member of a church tell me one time, we need to get the young people here and teach them the old ways. And I looked at him and I said, brother, if they want to know the old ways, they'd be here. Right. And so churches, they tend to wake up too late to that kind of stuff. And so, reaching unbelievers, reaching the next generation, that stuff doesn't just happen. It doesn't just, you don't just automatically that happens. It doesn't work that way.
I think that's kind of a good segue too into one of the things that you wanted to talk about the most today. Just really talking about kind of the hybrid church, online, access to the, online resources to watch preaching and worship and things like that. Tell me what you think about that.
Well, so in the survey, one of the things we did was we put out, we do the one-day conference and we do Vision Box. And so it has the different titles of the different 5 things we do. And so when we asked from the Vision Day and for the Vision Box and the one-day conference, what they wanted to learn more about, 59% said leadership development, 56% said they wanted to learn about a discipleship pathway, and 48% said they wanted to learn about a clear mission and vision, which I love that. That's wonderful. That's great. We need to know how to lead and disciple.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then from our small church strategies, which is a new resource we created this past year, the number one thing was outreach and evangelism, which goes with what we said earlier. The second thing that they talked about, that was 69%. 51% said preaching to equip, which I've been challenging pastors to preach to equip. And then 43% was to overcome discouragement. And all those topics are wonderful. And so when I'm talking with Mark at the end of the survey, and he's like, well, these are the things people said. And he just made this passing statement. He said, I was really surprised that more pastors didn't talk about hybrid church. And he goes, I guess, but I guess you're going to focus on the other stuff. I said, oh, no. I'm going to spend everything I can do in the next year focusing on hybrid church. Because here's the problem with that. Just because they don't recognize they need to do it doesn't mean that they don't need to do it.
Right. Yes.
That's why we brought Jesse on. Jesse's come on to help pastors take this message they've already created and take that message and break it down and get some mileage out of it, because the pastor's message is insider focused. The purpose of the message is to preach to the church, and that's great. But most of our churches are dying because they're completely insider focused. And what we want to do is help you take some of what you've already created and make it to where people can understand it and reach the outside.
Absolutely.
And so when I get this back and it's the same old stuff, mission and vision and having clarity there and leadership development, I love that. That's my wheelhouse. But what is not my wheelhouse is what you and I are doing now. And that is doing the podcast, doing, I do a tremendous behind the scenes, is the way I say at work, with social media and things like that. Because if I don't do that, I'm not going to reach new people. 99.9% of anybody that comes to your church they're going to come to your church because they connected with you online and checked out your website first.
Yeah.
And I'm going to be very honest with you. Most church websites are not very good.
Right.
Most church websites are basically just the bulletin that they hand out on Sunday morning on their website. There's no language there that communicates with people that don't know Jesus. There are no topics that talk about what people are going through. We ignore all the issues. And I'm telling you what, Caralee, there's never been an easier time in the history of the church to connect with those that don't know Jesus.
Yeah,
It's
especially
right
digitally.
It's just right there for us. But we don't think that way. We still have the people kicking and screaming, going, we got to get back in person. We got to get back in person. I think that's great. I think we do need to meet in person, but I'm amazed at all the people who built their entire theology around one verse that says, don't forsake the assembling of yourself together. Now that's a great verse, and it is true. And so here's the way most small church pastors approach the online thing. They view it as either or. Either we're going to do a great job in person, or we're going to do a great job online. And all I'm telling you is it needs to be both and.
Yeah, absolutely.
I want pastors. I want you guys and you ladies. I want you to do this in your churches. I want you to lock away some time. I wish you would spend a whole day, but I know most of you won't. But maybe a half a day every week focusing on online content. You say, well, I don't know what to do. That's why you need to connect with Jesse, because that's why he's come on with us, is to help you take the message you've already created, break that thing down, and then use it to reach people that don't know Jesus.
Right. Right. And I think we talked about this with Jesse too on our podcast, but like once you kind of dive in, it's not as intimidating as it seems. I mean, reaching out to people on different social media platforms can seem a little bit intimidating sometimes, but it's really, it's really not.
This is my 111th podcast.
And you didn't know a thing about it when you started, right?
Doing a podcast because 2 years ago, Austin goes, we need to do a podcast. And we did one the next week. And we've had Carrie Newhoff on our podcast, and Derwin Gray on our podcast, and Lance Witt on our podcast, and Tony Morgan, along with a lot of other people who might be as well known as they are. And people are like, how do you get those guys on your podcast? Well, I just asked them.
Yeah.
Hey, would you be on our podcast? Sure, I'll be on your podcast. Okay. And some of these people I don't even know. And so all I'm saying is this, as we kind of wrap this thing up today, I want to remind everybody that when Jesus was about to go to heaven, before he went to the cross, he told a parable. And at the end of it, he goes this: but when the Son of Man returns to the earth, will I really find faith in the earth? And I don't think most of our churches have very much faith. Our systems are built on the new fads. We don't allow the Holy Spirit to guide and direct what we do. We're not believing God to do the big things. And I'm right now, I'm talking to you. I'm a living example of what Jesus will do if you'll dare to trust him to do something different.
Right.
I just want to tell a story one more time about meeting you. So I'm sitting here. Austin used to do my copy editing, and I needed a new copy editor. And I'm going, okay, I've got to find somebody. And my daughter, Tiffany, works at the Unstuck group, and I reached out to her and said, do you know anybody? And she said, our copy editor is leaving because she's pregnant, about having a child. So she said, we're looking for somebody too. So she told Tiffany about somebody that she knew who knew you. So the girl that I reached out to didn't even know you.
Right.
And so I'm prepared that my copy editor is going to be someone anywhere in America. And I meet you, and the first thing I find out is you live about 15 minutes from me, or 15 miles from me. And as we get to talk, we find out, oh, wait a minute, your daddy is a small church pastor. Oh, wait a minute, you went to Clemson University, was a communications major. All three of my kids went there, and Tiffany, who works at Unstuck, was a communications major. She's 2 years behind you. And then, of all the things in the world, your daddy's last pastorate for several years was the church, which is literally 2 minutes. It's a mile up the road from where I live.
It is.
And you can't make this stuff up.
I know.
I mean, there's no other opportunity in life that I would have made. And my niece and my nephew attend the same church you attend. And one of them's on staff there. And so it's just like, in fact, I was talking about you at Thanksgiving. So she pulls out the directory and looks you up.
Oh my goodness.
And so I'm sitting there going, my God, and you guys lead a home group, and you're plugged in. But you also, and we won't go into this, but you've also seen the scars of pastoring a small church with your family.
Oh yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
They've been through some difficulties. And so finding you was just another example of what I meant earlier when I said, man, I'm just being used.
Yeah.
Jesus is like, Dale, you just get out of the way and let me build this thing the way I want to. And so as we kind of move to the end of the day, I just want to remind all the pastors listening, listen, we love you. We care about you, and we understand how difficult it is. But you can't hide your head in the sand when it comes to learning how to connect with people online. If you continue to ignore that aspect of reaching people, your church will not make it. You will not have any new people coming in. You won't have any new blood coming in. And so we're going to come beside you. We're going to come along beside you and help you and train you and equip you to know how to take what you're already doing and just do it in a new way. Jesus said this story. He told us this story. He says, you don't put new wine in old wineskins. And everybody's preached on this, because he says, if you put the new wine in the old wineskins, they'll break and you'll lose all the wine. And that's because of the fermentation process. Fermentation, which is the life process of the newness, the energy that takes place, can't happen in old wineskins. They can't handle it. But in the Luke version of that story, he tells it in several of the Gospels, or several Gospels record it. In the Luke version, it closes with this verse. And Jesus said this, and no one, having drunk new wine, likes it. For they say the old wine tastes better. Well, I get that. I understand that. I grew up watching, the Southern Gospel quartets and I get the Bill Gaither homecoming videos. I understand all that. I totally understand it. And I am not an old person hater. I want to make sure people know I love the old people in our churches.
Oh, yeah.
The old people that are in the pews and the ones in the graveyard built everything we have today.
Right.
But you can't just keep catering to them without acknowledging we've got to reach new people. And too many people spend their time talking about what Jesus did in their life instead of what God's doing today. And so at the end of that verse, when Jesus says, and no one who's drunk new wine wants it, because they say the old wine tastes better. If you drink wine, if you understand, there are people who pay hundreds of thousands of dollars for a bottle of wine because of the vintage and how old it is. I don't get all that. I can't fathom that, But here's the problem. If all you ever drink is old wine, you'll eventually run out of wine. And so, Pastor, you are the catalyst. You are the person that Jesus has set for such a time as this to help your church make that transition. Not throwing away the history, not throwing away the past. If you could just learn to adopt the mindset of that it's both and instead of either or, you will find that your ministry will be sustainable. And here's the bottom line. If we don't raise up healthy churches and hand them off to the next generation healthy, we are dooming the ability of the church to have an impact. And so at 95 Network, we're here for you. We want to stand beside you. We want to come along, if we need to come and do a conference with you or come do some consulting with you, or if it's just our content, maybe, you just need a connection. But we want to be here for you. We want to, if you need a coach, we want to coach you. We love the small church. It's our passion. It's our dream to do that. But we've got to raise up healthy churches today to hand off to the healthy, hand off to the next generation, or else the churches are not going to be here in the next generation. So that's me in a nutshell.
There you go. Well, I'm just prayerful, for churches all across the nation, especially small and mid-sized churches, that this will be a year of encouragement and growth. And like you said, trying new things, having faith in the Lord to take it farther than you could have ever done it yourself. So,
well, if 95 Network's going to be what God's called it to be, we have to raise up a team. We have to raise up the next generation. We have to hand this thing off. And so that's my heart. That's my desire. That's my passion. And having, wonderful people like you as part of this team has been such a encouragement to know, hey, this is much bigger than me. And the need is much bigger than what I can possibly do. Again, if there's 300,000 churches and 95% of them are small, there's so much work to be done. So that's why
and also so much potential. I mean, there's so much hope.
Oh,
so much hope.
I'm a glass half full guy.
Yeah, same here. So I'm excited to see what God's going to do this year.
Me too. So thank you for today. And if we can help you, as you listen to the podcast, if there's anything we can do to help you, please reach out to us at 95network.org. and just, you can email us there, and we would love to walk with you, support you, and stand with you. And thank you, Caralee, for being on this team.
You are welcome. It is my pleasure. And thank you, Dale, for all that you do. Thanks for listening to the 95 Podcast. We look forward to sharing another episode with you next week. In the meantime, visit our website at 95network.org. The website is loaded with great resources created for small and mid-sized church leaders. Until next time, have a great week.